Good evening. Hopefully there's enough seats for everyone. I think there may be a couple loose seats in the middle and a couple spots for those standing at the back. Welcome here this evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is Michael Tao. I'm the CAO, or the Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Perth. Really appreciate that you all took time on a beautiful summer evening to come out and join us here tonight. Hopefully it doesn't get too warm in the building. Just a quick couple of housekeeping things, since it is a full house. For emergency exits, there's the door you came in there. There's two over there. And I think that is the exits. If you need washrooms, there's some out the doors and up the stairs, or in the foyer, I think down the hallway, there's washrooms as well. Can everyone hear at the back okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we have a couple things for this evening. I know that we're all here because we love Perth, we're passionate about this town, about what happens here and about how growth unfolds. I know that it's an emotional and passionate topic for all of us. I know there's lots of feelings on all sides, both for and against. I ask that as we go through tonight, there's an opportunity for questions, which will explain the process later. That we remain respectful of each other so we can have a positive night where we can learn and discuss this process. So there's a panel of people here in front of you to answer your questions later. So I'll just introduce them quickly. So we have Joanna Bowes, our Director of Development Services, who will be leading the presentation tonight. Jennifer Luong from Novatech, who is our transportation expert. Mark said also from Novatech for utilities. Trevor Trophy, Fire Chief, if you can't tell from the uniform. Mayor Brown, and then Grant Mahan, the Director of Environmental Services. So again, during the question period later, depending on your questions, these individuals are here to help us with your questions. So with that, again, thank you for coming, and I'll turn the floor over to Joanne. Oh, sorry, the mayor would also like to speak first. I think you just get it. Sorry. Yeah.
As the mayor has said, it's wonderful that so many have turned out tonight. It shows your interest in the town and its well-being. So Michael has mentioned, I'm Mayor Judy Brown, and the council are here, Anne McCrae, Gary Waterfield, and David Bird. So I'll tell you, and the subject matter experts have already been introduced. So I'll tell you a little bit about the process, which has engendered so much interest. This council has been in power since November of 2022. Shortly before we began our term, a couple of representatives from CAIVAN came to us and told us their plans. As time went by, an analysis was made of what they presented. We found that it didn't completely agree with our official plan. So we had some discussion that didn't work out, so CAIVAN appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. From there it went to, they asked for mediation. That's lasted about a year. Finally, the results of the mediation were brought to council and county council. Both of those agreed that mediation is a process of compromise, and we agreed that the compromises were significant. So the way the process works, and it's mandated by the provincial government, it's basically like a trial. The proceedings are not divulged to the public, and it's unfortunate that came across as, we're keeping it a secret from you. Was it the case intentionally? It's just the way the process works. So we're here tonight to present what the agreement was, was agreed upon. And so you can have as much knowledge about the plan as we do, so. Subject matter experts are here, and so I will turn it over to Joanna.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? We're good? Okay. If I get quiet, somebody just yell at me and I will try to speak more clearly. And we'll go from there. Once I figure out how to use this. Okay. Welcome, really, thank you very much for coming. I know it's been a long wait for everyone to learn about what this settlement has been after quite a few years. I'm joined by the Director of Development Services, so between myself and the team who's before you, we worked and mediated with the developer to try to come up with a solution that sort of suited all parties. What I like to say is that when nobody is happy with the decision, it's usually a good decision. So that's how I'm going to open this night out with that. So I'm just going to do a quick background and overview. So until recently, Perth has not seen an awful lot of growth. And so this is something very contentious because like many people don't know a lot about it. But I'm hoping tonight, once we're through this PowerPoint presentation, we're opening the floor up for questions, and we can ask questions about development or about this development specifically, and we'll try our best to answer those. And so essentially, we can't talk about exactly what happened in mediation, but only the outcome. So I think if you've been following this, you'll know where we were at the beginning. And then there's a gap in time. And then what I will be presenting with you is what settlement occurred. So we're going to cover a brief history of the file. We're going to talk about the second bridge, phasing of the subdivision, affordable housing, commercial lands, setbacks and lot size, ecology, street widths, and the next steps. And then I want to review the petition signed by many residents of the town and just explore how those items were met or not met, or why, how we did best we could for that outcome. So I'm not going to go through this entire timeline. This will be posted on our website, but effectively it starts off May 8th with notice of complete application, which means the developer submitted an application, we reviewed it and noted that it was complete enough to move forward with a public meeting. I think probably many of you were at the public meeting that happened August 10th, 2023. And shortly thereafter, the developer appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal because no decision had been made within the appropriate time frame. From there, we went on and had case management conferences, and hearing dates were set. Eventually, we ended up in mediation and had many mediation sessions over a variety of topics. And then finally, settlement was reached. And now we're going to review the settlement with you. And the people who are participants in the Ontario Land Tribunal will have until June 22nd to make their comments to the Ontario Land Tribunal. You will have had an email to that effect. And then there will be a settlement date, a one-day settlement date set for August 6th. So we'll just review the original proposal submitted. So the original proposal had mainly single-family dwellings, 640 dwellings, 299 townhouses, and it showed the maintenance of a 9-hole golf course, as well as 16.75 meter roadways. What it did not include was a second access point, affordable housing, a mix of housing types. There was no commercial or institutional land proposed. There was a lack of sidewalks and bicycle lanes or lack of active transportation and insufficient parking. So as I mentioned, we had the public meeting on August 10th, and following that meeting, council passed a motion. I won't read the entire motion out here, but effectively it said that we were looking for the addition of a second bridge. We needed to review the functionality of the site with respect to a number of things: parking spaces, traffic, landscaping, and servicing. And then we wanted to have what's known as a complete community. So a complete community is a community that has multiple housing types, so anything from single families right through to apartments. It would also have commercial or institutional uses, green space, parkland, anything that you think, when you think of a community, it would have. And so the recommendation was that that staff work with the developer to review everybody's comments that we had from the public and from the peer reviewers and staff, and amend their plans and come back. That didn't happen. We ended up being taken to the Ontario Land Tribunal, at which point what would have happened for all of you that I want to acknowledge is there was silence from the town. That's what it would feel like. You know, all of us in this panel had a say and got to a mediation and got to have our 2 cents worth. But from your perspective, there wasn't a lot of, you felt as though you weren't heard, you felt like there was no ability to make input. And probably felt like it's really unfair because you all care about your community. We did do our very best to provide communication when we could under the situation we were in, a legal situation. But I think we all acknowledge here that that would have been very, very difficult for this community. And so I think that's just something that I wanted to say. I know that every member of council and staff really had a difficult time with this and actually talked about it multiple times and tried to figure out what we could do or how we could make this better. And we did the best we could do with the bad situation. So having said that, there were 54 participants, people that signed up to be able to be part of this process. And they were able to come to case management conferences, which happened on those days. And then a Ontario Land Tribunal hearing was set for August 19th to September 13th, 2024. Once that date was set, all the peer reviewers wrote our witness statements. They are all available on the Engaged Perth website. We took a lot of time to review the plans and sort of know where each of our special interests had concerns. We sent those off to the developer, and at that point, they rescheduled the hearing because they felt like they needed to gather more information based on what our witness statements said. So after that, another hearing was set for February of 2025. And once again, we had to update our witness statements and send them off. At which point, the developer asked for mediation, which we agreed to. Mediation is always the most positive outcome of an Ontario Land Tribunal hearing. So from that, we received a revised concept plan. I'm sorry, this is not very big, but this is what I have. It will also be on the website. So they did add a second bridge, they added an affordable housing block, and they did talk about having commercial lands, but they didn't indicate it on the plan. And so the total number of units increased from 939 units to 975 units. At this point in time, don't know where the endangered species habitat is gonna be, it's hard to make a plan. And so, at this point, the town felt as though, this is still premature. We still don't have the information we need to be able to know, exactly where these things are going, or how much that they could actually put on their land. So let's talk about the second bridge. I know we opened up the engaged Perth for people's comments, and the biggest question we got was about the second bridge and putting the Peter Street Bridge in the multi-use pathway. So I'm gonna go through this quickly, and then I will take questions about it at the end of the presentation, but hopefully we'll be clear and succinct. So when we talk about phasing, a lot of the issues that everybody's had is about safe access onto the site. Can people be safe going on and coming out of the site? Either as, the construction crew who was building, or as people who are coming to live there and occupy the residence. So there has been, our traffic and fire chief reviewed these and essentially determined that as is with the Peter Street Bridge the way it is, we would permit no houses to be constructed. The bridge simply doesn't have capacity for in and out an emergency situation. If the bridges were twinned, and I'm going to show some drawings of that, so two bridges side by side, then it was felt that the town would be comfortable with having 100 units built because there would be an in and out safe access. But we still at that point said, but we need a second bridge. So CAIVAN came back and said, well, what if we build a multi-use pathway that doubles as an emergency access? And so traffic and fire reviewed that plan, which we'll look at, and determined if that was put into place, then the town would be comfortable with having 200 units constructed. After that, full stop, no other housing to be built until the second bridge across to the county lands or that area would be allowed. So I'm going to try this pointer out. Everyone see that? Yeah, okay. So this is Peter Street, and this is the twin bridge right here, leading into the subdivision. I will not do a good job as the traffic experts on this. We'll probably be asked to explain it later, but that's the twin bridge. And this little thing right here is the multi-use pathway, which is also the emergency access. I will flip sides to show it a little bit larger. So the emergency access would come off Lester Lane, and there have been plans provided that indicate trucks and fire trucks are able to make those turning dimensions, the turning radiuses to get up and on the bridge. So the addition of the multi-use pathway and putting of the bridge is what changed part of the reason why witness statements were changed to allow for additional housing to be constructed. Okay, this is just sort of a similar concept plan, but it shows the approximate location of the second bridge. The reason it is an approximate location is because both bridges, both the Peter Street Bridge and the proposed bridge, have to go what's called an environmental assessment process, where the provincial government has to review social benefits, environmental benefits, economic benefits of the construction of the bridge in various locations to determine which is the best site. Our infrastructure master plan indicated that this was the best site. So for assumption purposes, we're thinking it's going to go there. When the EA process is started, things may change. It's probably unlikely because the first phases of those have been completed, but we're just calling it approximate because we just don't want to mislead anybody unnecessarily. So the next thing that I think is good for the public to know is that both of these bridges, where they're proposed to land, don't land on the developer's property. So they can start the bridge on their property, but then it has to land somewhere. And so in this case, the twin Peter Street Bridge and the multi-use pathway lands on town lands, town-owned lands. And so before the developer can actually start this process, they'll have to go through a series of requirements, just like they've done with these lands. So they would have to first purchase the land from the town. And then they would have to go through an environmental assessment process, and they would have to do various studies like ecological studies and environmental impact studies to ensure that is permissible and falls in place. They also need permits from conservation authority with respect to cut and fill, floodplain, and safe access regulations. And so that's something they have to go through before they can even begin twinning the bridge. So that's a long process in itself. And secondly, as I mentioned before, the northern bridge over to the county lands is owned by the county of Lanark. So a similar purchase is necessary from the county of Lanark or wherever those lands end up being. And similar studies would also have to be done in relation to cut and fill, floodplain, environmental impact statements and the like. So this isn't a short process. This will take time to be able to begin the construction of houses. Affordable housing was a big one, I think, for everybody. And so I put this slide up in almost every presentation I do, who is responsible for what. And it's circled there in red, and it turns out that affordable housing is provincial and county responsibility. The county is a part of this process because they are the approval of subdivisions. But much of the affordable housing work will be done at the county level when we get to those topics. So again, I apologize, this is as large as I could make it, but this is the affordable housing law. We are anticipating it will hold approximately 77 units. The reason we don't know the specifics is because what happens is you have a plan of subdivision, it divides the land into lots and blocks. And so the lots will be for the houses and the blocks are for other things like apartments or stacked townhomes or commercial blocks. And those are dealt with through site plan control. It's a particular planning tool used to determine the functionality of the site. That would indicate, where does snow go? How is it removed? What does the lighting look like? Is the parking functional? And a part of that would be determining how many units would able to be fit on those sites. So right now it's approximate and it's at 77 units. Commercial lands. So throughout this process, the developer had said that they were going to put commercial lands in, but then continuously had been unable to show us the block of lands where those commercial lands would go. Finally, by the end of it, they determined that the commercial land would be in the approximate vicinity of where the clubhouse is now. So, so there will be some commercial lands there. In addition to that, there is in the zoning bylaw an allowance for home-based businesses. So home-based businesses are generally businesses you operate from your home. And then you can sort of incubate business that way and then move on to a bigger commercial area. And so those are permitted as well. The other thing that we talked about is in the affordable housing block on the first floor, we discussed the potential of having commercial uses like a coffee shop or medical offices or an institutional use like a daycare. So those are some of the ways we've tried to address commercial and institutional uses to make this a more of a complete community. Ecology. So ecology revolves around permissions from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks and the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. So I was unable to get our ecologist to come to the meeting, but I wanted everybody to see this for awareness. I don't know if I'll be able to answer a ton of questions about this, but I will give it my best shot. But I wanted to just show you this. One button. All the red areas, can everybody see that? That is species at risk habitat. So a good chunk of this land is species at risk and their habitat. And so it's generally dealt with, species at risk habitat is dealt with through the province. And typically what happens is when there is one, for example, one species at risk, is if those lands get removed, they get compensated somewhere else on the site. In this case, each of these spots are different types of habitat. So some might be bats, some might be turtles, some might be snakes, birds, you name it. And so the problem is when you try to destroy one habitat and put it somewhere else, you are then destroying the next habitat. So that's fairly problematic for a developer. And so what they've done is they've applied to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks and asked for what's called a overall net benefit permit, which is essentially a permit that says if the government of Ontario feels as though this development is positive, socially or economically, then we'll give you permission to destroy it, provided there's a net benefit to that species overall. That sounds complicated to me. So I think that's all I'm going to say about that. It's very political, and I don't pretend to really understand the process in its completeness. But at this time, the MECP is reviewing those permits. It is a developer-driven permit. So the town did try to follow up with regards to status of this permit. And we know at one point, there was no constraints map provided by the developer. Our peer reviewer did up this map. But because it's a developer-driven process, the town and its peer reviewers are unable to access that information. So I can't give you a lot of answers with respect to that. It is sitting with the province, and we need to await the decision. What we've done is ask for in the draft conditions the permits when they are granted, so we can see them and what they entail. All right, a large portion of the lands are also within the floodplain. And as I mentioned before, at the time, back in 2024, there had been no cut and fill permit submitted. It finally was submitted and approved this January. And just to address everybody, because there's a lot of concerns about who deals with the flooding of properties or the people's properties who move there. And from everyone I've spoken to, in general, developers, municipalities, and conservation authorities and other agencies are not responsible for insurance. The homeowner is. And I can guess how that brings with everybody here, but that's how that functions. So all these green areas here are floodplain. So again, a large chunk of this property is floodplain, and it does actually, when you go back to species at risk map, not surprisingly, line up with a lot of the species at risk. So I think I talked about it later on in this slideshow, but I'll just sort of summarize really quickly, and then we can skip that slide if we get to it. Is that when the Conservation Authority issues a cut and fill permit, they used to be able to put conditions on it to sort of make sure that things were done appropriately. The provincial government has removed the ability for the Conservation Authority to be able to condition a cut and fill permit. So in this case, the Conservation Authority issued a cut and fill permit. But they could not put on it, go see the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to get your species at risk permits. So if you're doing a cut and fill and you remove some species habitat, you might not be aware of it because, at least as far as I can tell, those agencies aren't talking to each other. They may be in the background, but we certainly haven't heard that at this level. So the province has been making a lot of changes, and these are some of the things that are going on. I have, as recently as I want to say Thursday, met with some senior policy advisors of the provincial government and have asked them these questions. And so I am awaiting answers. I was hoping to have a little bit more for you guys tonight, but I haven't heard that yet. But if I find out more, we will do our best to let you know. So then the other thing is it's also in an intake protection zone. So the idea of that, an intake protection zone is there to protect your water quality. We get access our water from the Tay River, and so we want to protect the areas around it. So if you have an IPZ 10 zone, that's the most critical zone, you wouldn't want to, for example, put a gas station in it because if the gas leaks, it would hurt our water source. This is IPZ 9, and we had circulated to the Source Water Protection, which is also in conjunction with the River Valley Conservation Authority. And because it's a residential use, there were no concerns with respect to this, and they didn't make any additional comments other than saying there were no concerns. But we did take this into consideration. Street width. I'm going to flounder here a little bit because my computer is over there with notes on it, and I don't have them. But I'm doing this kind of from memory, so I may miss a few points, but hopefully we can cover them later when people ask questions. There are 3 street widths within the subdivision: a 23-meter right-of-way, an 18.5 meter right-of-way, and a 16.75 meter right-of-way. The 23-meter right-of-way holds, as you can see from this cross-section, landscaping, parking, like on one side of the street, cycling and walking paths, and then actual traffic movement. 18.5 meter right-of-way, a little bit narrower. This is what you see in today's subdivisions generally. It is quite narrow, but it's still able to hold landscaping, sidewalks for active transportation and traffic. And now the last one is a local street width, which is 16.75 meters. That is a very narrow street. And unfortunately for the town of Perth, our official plan allows that something to be updated. But because it allowed it, we had to work with the developer to try to make this feasible. And later on, if required, I think our traffic engineer can sort of review the functionality of these streets. And we got them to a very limited number of these. Okay, so next steps. We concluded mediation and reached a settlement. And then we'll be presenting, like I said, to the Ontario Land Tribunal on August 6th. People who are signed up as participants are able to make a participant statement. You can either make a new one, add to it, or remove the statement. I believe there are 54 of you. And then the board will consider the settlement as well as the participant statements. And then they will hold a one-day hearing and make a decision about that. And so that's essentially how that process works. So this is the concept plan. I really wish these looked better on the screen, but this is the concept plan. And here's some other ones, just indicating the revised floodplain boundary and affordable housing block, stacked townhouse block, the second crossing, and multi-use pathway. That is the draft plan, which is considerably more difficult to read. We've blown it up here if you want to look at it after. There's 3 of them. It's a dog's breakfast. Enjoy that. I had to go through and check all the lot sizes, and that wasn't fun at all. But they're there for you to look at, because you just simply can't on a website or anywhere else see that. It's just too many homes. Okay, I think we've sort of been through this. I just talked too much. But we're gonna have someone on the 6th. And then at that point, if it's agreed to and nothing changes, then what happens is the developer will go ahead and start meeting the draft conditions. There's 113 draft conditions. Draft conditions are things that must be complete before the land can be divided and before houses can be constructed. So there's a whole lot of them. One of the main ones, and I think it's on the slide here, is they have to redo most of the studies. So when they started out, there was a proposed amount of homes and a proposed layout. And then throughout this whole mediation process, the number of homes have changed, the location of things have changed. There's a lot of changes. And so the studies need to be updated to reflect that. Out of those studies, it is quite possible that they'll have to amend the plan again. So my thought is, quite frankly, this is a little cart before the horse, right? We've made a plan, now we're going to figure out what we're going to do with the studies. I think they are going to get there, and it's going to be quite a bit like this, but there is going to be a lot of work for them to do. This isn't a short process. They're not going to see houses in the ground this year or next. I would suspect we're more like 3 years out from anything. What could happen, and what they are legally allowed to do, is they can request a pre-servicing agreement. And that is an agreement essentially with the town that says, okay, we can't sell houses, we can't build houses, we can't even divide the lots into separate lots, but they service the land, so they can build the roads and put the pipes in the ground and do the utilities. So that may come before 3 years, but there's also a lot of work to go through there. They're going to have to find a location for a hydro station, which is part of what we call a composite utility plan, and that itself takes time. So you're not going to see a lot of movement for a little while, and there are a lot of additional information that we need moving forward. Okay, I'm really glad I did this, because I see that it was being handed out here today. And I had gone back and had a look at the petition and wanted to sort of acknowledge what everybody's concerns were and how we met or didn't meet or tried to meet everything. When I'm through these, I think then we'll be able to take time for questions. And I do have other slides that I can flip to if people are asking those questions, but we'll go through these 9 points. So one of the comments made, the first comment was made, is that access to the north is created from the outset of the development and used as a primary access for all construction and residential traffic. So the first point I want to make, because I have heard this from everybody on ED's birth, and I do not blame you, what happens with construction traffic? Unfortunately, construction traffic is not dealt with through the Ontario Land Tribunal. It just isn't, and it can't be. So it's not a planning act thing, so the Ontario Land Tribunal doesn't look at it. However, in our draft conditions, we have put the requirement for the developer to come to us with a construction management plan that then the town will have to review and approve before any construction can start. So, for the first point, we can't really address construction traffic. It's not allowed. The second thing is, although we don't have the first bridge, we don't have the second bridge over to the county before 200 houses, we have to remember that when we started the mediation process, there was no bridge. There was only going to be the Beaufort Bridge. So we were able to secure the requirements for both the twin bridge and the multi-use pathway as well as the second bridge. And both of those require significant work and purchase of property. And that there's a limit on the number of housing units that can be constructed at each stage, and as well as the number of provisions that need to be met. And so if people have questions about that later, I will defer to our traffic and safety experts. But I feel as though this has been addressed to the best of our ability. Again, as I started off at the beginning, when nobody's happy with the decision, sometimes it's not the right one, but it's the best one, the best outcome. So we've addressed this to the best of our ability. The second is the total number of housing units is no more than 650 units as stated in the town of Perth's existing infrastructure plan. So our infrastructure plan was drafted in 2019 under a completely different reality. As before COVID, it was before build more houses faster, it was before the province making at least 21 changes to the Ontario Building Code and Planning Act and Heritage Act and Development Charges Act and everything else they've changed. And so the reality is completely different. And I can tell you right now, every property, when I did planning, even 10 years ago, I've looked at the property and say, I think it's going to fit this many units. Triple that every time. And that's the applications that we're seeing now. It's just the way this situation is going on with the requirement to build more houses. So we don't have complete discretion on that. The planning decisions have to be consistent with provincial policy statement, which looks to density and increasing housing. So based on this current framework and recent Ontario Land Tribunal decisions, in similar situations with this developer and others, 650 units would be a difficult thing to defend at the Ontario Land Tribunal. They would be looking for more. Our official plan does say that 25% of the housing should be affordable. There is no getting around that. I preach this everywhere. And I can say, in other developments we've done in this town, we have actually accumulated in the last, since I've been here anyways, significant cooperative housing and affordable housing developments. In this case, however, again, once it's taken out of the hands of the municipality and it goes to the Ontario Land Tribunal, we're under provincial regulation, which only requires 5% affordable housing. So under our official plan, we would have been looking to have 250 units of affordable housing. Under provincial guidelines, we're looking for 50. So as I said before, we've landed on 77 houses, give or take. So we've actually done better than what the province requires, although not as well as we would like to have done had this been not an Ontario Land Tribunal process. Development is not permitted within the 100-year flood zone. That is key indeed, and unfortunately, the town has no control over that. Floodplains are approved by conservation authorities. So we don't have a say in this matter. It is up to the conservation authority. The conservation authority did review this multiple plans over the mediation period, and have granted a cut and fill permit, which effectively means dumbing it down a lot because I'm not an engineer, taking the high ground, cutting it out, and filling in the low ground so that it's no longer a floodplain. And so that permit was issued in the spring of this year by the Conservation Authority. Other cut and fill permits will be required for the other lands they're required to gain for the landing of their bridges on either side of the river as well. So to point out, some people had emailed me and said there are still storm ponds and lots within the floodplain I tried to get a map from a developer, which I don't have. But the understanding is when the cut and fill, or when the construction work is done to cut and fill the lowlands, the storm ponds will be out of the floodplain and the majority of the houses will be out of the floodplain. Okay, the front nine golf course is permanently retained as golf course or open space. This one made me sad because this was the one that everyone said we met. We didn't necessarily meet this. But because the town doesn't have a say in the sale of those lands, the developer could sell the remainder of the golf course lands. They could choose to develop it in another way. The town doesn't have a say if they meet the provincial policy statement and the official plan and the zoning, which, as we've seen here, you can amend to make suit your needs. So, we're hoping it will remain a golf course. The developer hasn't said one way or the other what the intention is. But I would never promise anything in development. Lots of people think this is a green space and it's gonna stay like this forever. Somebody told me, don't let anyone tell you that. Things can always change. But either way, the town can't require privately owned land to remain a golf course or open space. We're almost done. Okay, there is no attempt to address net zero. Again, it's a really good idea and one that I support vehemently, personally. However, there are no provincial requirements or standards to allow the town to be able to enforce this at all. In fact, under Bill 98, the province is actually asking municipalities to remove climate change and sustainability goals and not permitting them to put this in development. And so effectively our hands are tied here as well. As a result, the town does not have authority to require net zero development as a condition of approval. I'm taking questions at the end. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. Oh, this is a good one too. And not so much of a fun way. Retain existing environmental protection areas as identified in the town's official plan. So this kind of goes back to that species at risk habitat map. And effectively, we've identified it, but it is not, the town is unable to have a say in this matter. It is up to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And as discussed, that's proponent driven. And you just have to sort of wait for the outcome. As I mentioned, I followed up trying to get a status for tonight's meeting, and I do not have one, but we are making information. So we do get the studies peer reviewed, which is how we end up with the constraints map. But then the developer sort of sends things off to the MECP, and we're kind of left here waiting. So again, it's another thing that I've talked to senior officials in the province about to sort of get some understanding of what's happening and how this, why that's okay, I guess. So that's that. Thank you for pointing that out. We did 7, 8. Introduction of a phased approach to manage demand on infrastructure, recognizing other developments in town. So we are already phasing the plan as we sort of went over. The first phase is 200, and then the rest will probably be done actually in smaller phases. And at certain points, we will put a hole in certain areas. So for example, there is an archaeological site of significance there. So they will not be able to develop in that area until such time as that study is complete and artifacts have been removed. There's another part on site where there is contaminated lands. They will not be able to develop there until the lands are clean and have a permit from the province saying the lands are clean up to provincial standards. So there are going to be different phases and different requirements throughout this process for the developer to follow, and those are outlined in the draft conditions, which I understand are probably like not fun to read. You don't do this job, they're not fun to read when you have this job either. Anyways, we are though working towards, sort of managing infrastructure. So for example, we're working on the fifth site ourselves, that is, a wastewater lagoon expansion project, which takes the, wastewater from the houses and cleanses it and puts it back into the river cleaner than what it was. I was just on the tour. It is actually cleaner. It's kind of weird. But we've been given a $3 million grant to have that completed. So the other thing we're doing is we have an infrastructure master plan underway and a transportation master plan underway that will sort of help us move towards and develop better in the future. And we have an active transportation plan that was adopted in 2025, which the developer did review and is working with us sort of, I'll talk about this another slide, in the background as to how we can possibly put like a trail network around the subdivision. So we're looking into that. And then also there's been a lot of growth in this town. I think some people think there's not enough and some people think there's too much, but we've seen about 350 units of infill through apartments, apartment units approved in the town, as well as the approval for door subdivision, which is 94 units. So we have been working on development and getting this up and running. Again, construction activities can't be regulated through the draft plan approval process, but we have worked very hard on emergency access, on traffic, road conditions, and pedestrian safety. I don't know if you'll recall, if you probably don't remember anyways, from the meeting 3 years ago, the original proposal was to have for each lot a car in the garage and then half a car fit on the lot and then half a car out in the town right of way. And that was the one thing I said, no, we have to do that. So because it causes accessibility issues. Anyone, you know, who has a walker, who's impaired, who has a stroller, anything, we don't want the back end of the car, you know, out on a sidewalk. And so we were able to convince the developer to keep both parking spaces on their lot and have that sidewalk and right of way clear. So that was a big ticket item for me, and it doesn't seem like it should be a lot to ask for, but it was, but we did get it in the end. So I do actually think that was achieved. I think we are doing our very best to promote infill development and to be sure that things are accessible and safe and to manage our infrastructure. And then the last is that plans to provide a more complete community design approach and meet the developers commitment to an integrated, walkable, cyclable community. I fought long and hard for this, and while I will acknowledge that it's not where I wanted to get to, my goals being up here and the possibilities being down here, we did get some commercial land. We do have uses that are available in terms of institutional uses like daycare, home-based business, and other commercial uses. We also have parks, and we are working on a trail system. And so I feel like, well, I was hoping for more. We did the best we could to get a complete community. I think we were reasonably successful in that regard. And then I would talk a little bit briefly about factors beyond municipal control. I've done a lot of harping about the provincial government. And actually, because I didn't have my notes in the slides, I forgot some too, but I'll probably get my digs in later. There's a lot of pressure from the province of Ontario to build more homes faster. Oftentimes, sort of, despite other things that we would consider important for a community like ecology or functionality or safety. I guess the point is they're trying to build more homes because we're in a housing crisis. And so there's a lot of regulation changes that have happened that have made it very difficult for for planning departments and other departments to do our best work. And then I was just, this made me feel a little bit better. You can't see it, but it's Mark Carney's Facebook page. And he says that he's touring the CAIVAN plant in Barhaven, and he says that they're innovative builders and fantastic. So with federal government and provincial government support, it's a very hard thing to deal with issues like ecology and functionality. On the flip side of things, if you're a business owner or you want to see growth, like this is happening at an incredible rate. And so there's a lot of good that will come to our town as well. And so I think it's really hard, it's really important to remember that with every negative, there is a positive, even if it seems a little bleak, depending on which side you're on. And now I will open the floor to questions.
Not asking a question, I just, go over the steps for the questions here. I assume there's lots of questions. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to mention at the beginning of a panel of experts here that, depending on the question, are here to answer the question. There is a microphone, we're streaming online too, and also just so people in the room can hear. If you have a question, you can ask the line up here in the middle. If you have mobility issues, I'm sorry there's no portable microphone. I don't know if you can get someone next to you to come up and ask a question for you. Or if you don't have a chance tonight, or if you have a statement or something else, you're looking for a question afterwards, please visit our website. Just search CAIVAN in there, it'll bring you to our Gauge Perth portal. We read and check all those messages and emails and comments as well. Out of respect for all those gathering in line behind you, please keep your questions to the point, so that we get to all the questions that are here today. You just have a statement to make. Ask you to wait to the end, just make sure there's time. We're really trying to get through the questions here today, so it'll be a learning process. We are still accepting statements on our website. We look forward to the OLT. If you're a participant or registered participant with the OLT, they're also accepting comments yet as well. So again, please keep your questions short and to the point, and then we'll do our very best to answer that. Thank you.
Long process. Sorry. It's been a long process, and I'll be honest, I'm disappointed. I did like the fact that there was housing coming here. No problem with the housing. The big thing for us, my family anyways, was a second bridge. Okay. Now I know you're addressing it. There is no guarantee a second bridge is going to happen, because you know yourself. So until 3-4 years, we get 100 out, 200 out before you look at that. A lot of things change. Now you still have to address the what comes after the cars get off the property. They're coming down Peters to the Twin Bridge. Don't talk about, if you look at that, look at Peters Creek now, and I live on it. Well, yes, I have the first one. You look at that now with the blockage at Core, the traffic there is ridiculous. 18-wheelers coming down, all that sort of stuff. You have an issue outside of the park. You still have issues with the fact that, like you say, you won parts. Great, you did win the second grade, but we haven't seen it. You won't see it for years. You don't have an answer for the species, the major species. You don't have a real answer on the floodplain, because it's happening with the floodplains. You're going to fill in things. Where does that water go? Okay, does it go to farms that are so there's still a lot of questions. I'd like to know what's happening right now in downtown Perth when those cars come off the Twin Bridge.
It's Dawn. That is not my area of expertise, so I'm going to turn it over to our traffic expert.
So I'm not sure how many people had, there was a 2023 traffic study done, and I don't know if anyone had seen an update that was prepared as part of the witness statement by the consultant for CAIVAN. There was an update done in 2024, which considered the second bridge and the difference in traffic pattern with that bridge in place. And so the intersections of Wilson and Clear and Wilson and North were both included in that study. So the amount of traffic that's currently on those streets and projected amount of traffic that was in the town's 2019 IMP, Infrastructure Master Plan, was considered, as well as the traffic that would be added by this development. And so they looked at ultimate development with the whole thing and the second bridge. And they also looked at those intersections with just those first 200 units homes without the second bridge in place. So both of those scenarios. And they found that the signalized intersection could still handle the additional traffic. And it is a bit unique in the town's official plan, the way those two roads, North and Peter, are designated. North is designated as a local that really has more characteristics of a collector. But Peter is designated as collector where it has the characteristics of a local. So they are a bit reverse when you consider how they operate in real life. And that's what it is, I guess. But yes, there has been analysis done. It will be updated again. As Joanna was explaining, the plans have twisted and changed a little bit more. I wouldn't expect there to be a lot of change in the intersection findings. But it was assessed.
So are you moving Peters to the one way and North?
No,
or is it-
no. I heard questions about that, and I'm not sure what stemmed from. Initially, in the 2023 study that was prepared when they were not considering the second bridge, they did look at, well, what if you closed Peter between Lester Lane and Rogers? What if you didn't allow inbound traffic at that small block? So what if outbound traffic could choose between North and Peter, but inbound traffic had to come in off of North? So they did look at that, and I don't know if that's what caused a bit of the confusion, but anyway, that's not what's proposed currently, because they did agree that the second bridge should be provided. So no, there'd be no changes to the two-way traffic that's currently on North and Peter.
Thank you.
I'm sure that you addressed this too, but I feel like, because this area votes conservatives, so if you vote for a bear, you get bitten by a bear. But we feel like we come back to the cowboy building of this 1970s where whatever goes, with the government throwing out absolutely bizarre building posts that they're for God's sake. How is the town going to deal with CAIVAN when they do in Perth what they did in Richmond and got them sued for? Like, how is there a backup plan to deal with them when they screw us over?
That's a good question, and I appreciate that for what it is. I have been and toured all of the subdivisions in Richmond and Barhaven and elsewhere. And I am aware, people pointed out about, fires that have happened and different things. The reality is that this is exactly what happens with development. Developers come in with an idea, we work through it. I feel like the answer, it's Ontario Land Tribunal. Land Tribunal makes a decision. That's the decision.
It sounds like if you don't like the decision, you get your own way.
I will not make a comment about that.
Do you have some sort of backup plan for when you, this CAIVAN has horrible reputation when they fail and screw us over, what you're going to do about it.
The best that we're going to do is try to put in place, development policies as we go along, particularly my understanding of that developer with respect to grading and drainage. And we hold securities, for the bulk of the subdivision. And so if things are done inappropriately or inadequately, the town has securities to go and fix that. That was one point I wanted to make that I forgot about, but I will do it now. I've been talking about site plan control for the affordable housing block and high density block proposed. Normally, we do site plan control and that helps with stone removal, functional parking, lighting and all that stuff. In that process as well, we collect security. So again, if something goes astray, the town has the ability to fix that problem. The government has not changed its regulations yet, but is talking about the removal of the abilities of planners to go through a site plan control process. I spoke with the province high level about that, and they said, no, we're not doing that yet. It's not a regulation. We're just looking for, your feedback, which I gave them, because effectively, it'll be really difficult to manage anything in those blocks or anywhere else where there's over 9 units. And then quite frankly, we have a building here in Perth that's been sitting vacant. And because we couldn't collect securities, we can't fix it up. And then it's actually stopping people from occupying the building, right? So
One on Rogers Road.
we're just gonna leave it, but there are examples in town where we haven't been able, because of this policy, to collect securities. We can't do anything. So I was explaining to the senior policymakers, like, hey, you're actually, things are gonna be built, but now if they can't get finished, you can't actually occupy those homes. So, I think they took that to heart, I hope. But that was another thing I wanted to mention as an important piece. I don't remember your beginning question because I went off on a tangent. Okay.
And then healthcare.
And so
Are we expected to do like a top math and infusion healthcare plan on our own, or is something going down about that?
we did speak with the hospital at the beginning of this development to get their feedback, and they seemed very positive about it. And didn't provide any other comments or details. So that's the feedback we've had.
My concern is very simple. Why does the town not just refuse to sell the entrance to the land?
That's a great question. I wonder if someone might pick up on, and that is a question for council. Not necessarily this council, because I don't know when or if that will happen.
Is there any legal precedence saying the town cannot just stand up and say, no, we're not selling that land?
None that I'm aware of, but not that we have checked.
Maybe that should be checked quite quickly.
Yes, a bit of my question, but my part B was, where is the second bridge going to empty? Where is the traffic going to go?
So that's a good question, and the answer is we still don't know, because there has not been an environmental assessment done, which would determine the location.
Is it Highway 7? Is it like,
It would, this is probably more of a traffic question. We will take that one. I don't want to put my foot in it because I'm not an expert.
Well, there's no planned connection to Highway 7. It would go to Christie Lake Road if it goes in the location that was studied in the IMP by the town. But again, as Joanna was saying, that has to be determined when they get into the details of, so they've done, so phases 1 and 2 of that environmental assessment process were completed through the town's IMP. the last two phases that are left to be done. So the first question is answered by phases 1 and 2 is, you know, what's the problem? What's the solution? And then the last two phases look at, well, what are the alternatives? So that's going to involve, should the bridge go here, here, or here? And it does involve land acquisition. So there will be other parties that play with that. But it also involves studying the environment. What are the impacts? Is it slightly better in this location or that one? But in terms of the traffic, the initial concept right now is based on a connection to Christie Lake.
Well, the county owns the land in a certain area and there's not another road there, so it's Christie Lake Road. So you still have the traffic having to come back into Perth and down Wilson Street.
Yeah,
So whether it comes out onto Wilson there or onto Wilson in town, you still have all of that traffic. And there's schools all over the place.
yes,
And I can tell you now, even before they built a house, the traffic on Peter is horrendous. The state of the road is horrendous. It's not safe. It's not acceptable that 200 houses will be built with construction related trucks going up and down Peter Street. It's just not acceptable. Sorry. I have a couple of observations and questions. One of my observations is that Perth is not alone here. The city of Toronto was recently run over by the Ontario Land Tribunal. Their planning department overruled to allow for the building, both things, a condo in the Rosedale Ravine. Okay, so this problem is not restricted here. Some of our restrictions are going to be that they're dissolving the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, right? This has been systematic since 2019 when people voted the Conservative Party in. There's been change after change after change to the ministry, to environmental, to planning, to what used to be called areas of national scientific interest, and so on. So I want to ask that. I want to observe that. I want to tell you that my husband and I live in Perth across from the docks in Lastewell Park. We are technically on floodplain. Our house is grandfathered because it's at the back of 3 acres of land. But we are not allowed, have never been allowed to build anything down towards the river, right? After the derecho, Cooperators Insurance pulled my overland flood protection and restricted my existing protection. I've now switched providers, but my insurance company will not pay out because I'm on the edge of a floodplain. So what happens when the cut and fill of the floodplain, which has zero scientific credibility, these people cough up $1 million for homes overlooking the Tay River, they get flooded. They go to their insurance company and the insurance company says, one and you're done. We'll pay that, but we're not insuring you anymore. Now they go to renew their mortgage at the bank and the bank says, hey, we're not lending you money against the house that you can't get house insurance on. So who then carries the can on that? I would suggest to you that it won't be the province. CAIVAN have long folded out and disappeared and started a dozen new companies. We, the taxpayers of Perth, in addition to having to stretch every possible resource we already have, will be out in the hinterland here, and we're going to be on the hook for this. And to be a part of this is just beyond the damage to the town. It's just absolutely disgraceful. My last point is a question to Grant McCann, which is there's a controversial, quite controversial work garage plan for that side of the river between Christie Lake. Where is this bridge in connection to that?
So the proposed rebuilding of the works garage on the current site, where it is now and where it has been for 60 years, the bridge is closer to the county, the proposed bridge is closer to the county, works yard. So it's not near the town of the current works yard, it's near the county line.
So it's going to be built on exactly the same site?
The
Really?
town's current public works, or the proposal for our works garage, yes.
So it doesn't interfere with the bridge at all? Okay, thank you.
And just to your point, another point I wanted to mention was there were previously 36 conservation areas, all based on watershed. Which was then knocked down to 6 and then brought back up to 7, and now we're back up to 9. But there has been a lessening of, I won't say lessening of resource, there have been changes to the conservation authority structure and watersheds. Which may or may not be helpful. Yes, sir, sorry.
Okay, no problem. So I guess my question is, you sort of have experience how what happens when you close off 4th Street last summer and again this year. So my question is, when you're servicing these lots, how much of this construction and closures and streets and so on happens outside of their site? So is there enough capacity, for example, for sewer, or do we have to have all the streets came to that site? Wildlife road tore up to put in bigger sewer pipes, consumers gas, how much are they going to be tearing up everything, and I know all the rest of it. So just wondering, what's the impacts to the town, which may happen fairly quick if they start resurfacing that site? Like how many streets are going to be closed? What's the impacts of that?
Everyone, Mark was that with that, so our role here. Here, hold on, a little closer. I work with Novatech, so Perth has retained me to review the materials, the infrastructure plans that CAIVAN has submitted. So, so what I'm looking at is you're looking at the sewer and the water. Your question is for the impact because of where they're located. They're going to need a wastewater pump station. So for all the houses that they're building, it's going to drain to a wastewater pump station, and then they'll have a force main. A dual 2 force mains that will go across the bridge. Right now, they're going to take it down towards the lagoons, right? So
Rogers Road is going to be.
Rogers Road, that's correct. So the question, they've got a proposed alignment going down Rogers Road. Is what they're doing at this stage was called a functional design, trying to demonstrate proof of concept. Can will it work? And so that's where we're at right now. After draft plan, they would go into what's called detailed design. They're looking more closely at the alignment, things like that.
So Rogers Road can be closed for months, then? Is that what you're saying?
I am not going to answer. It depends on the alignment. It depends on the technique, but conceptually, yes. If they did an open cut, you'd have segments of the road that is closed for a period of time. Absolutely. There's alternatives, but so they could look at things like directional boring, but it's not up to us as a reviewer to dictate how the method of construction. If that makes sense. Hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Well, it's relative, yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Long-time resident, first time speaker. How do you do? I have a few. I have a few questions I just want to ask. Maybe I can get them out one by one, right now, just as shortly as possible. So on October 6th, what exactly is going to be decided in the last the decision? Is it just the 114 or 13 conditions, or what exactly is the thing, and where's all the influence?
Sorry, yes. So we've been through this whole process at the beginning. People were able to register as participants. If you have not registered as a participant, then there's no ability to influence. The August sixth meeting is a one-day Ontario Land Tribunal hearing where they will review the settlement that's been reached between the developer and the town and the county. But they will also be considering the 54 participant statements and what their points are. So at that day, I'll be honest, I don't know if the decision is made that day. It may be made a little later on, but that they hear the settlement and then they hear the participant statements, and then they have the opportunity to just go with the settlement, make amendments based on participant statements, or decide against and say go back to the drawing board.
Thank you, that's helping enough. You know, just for those who are part of the sort of South CAIVAN or water rights or participants, maybe it's just organized, so we can maybe revise some of the statements. Something for our then sort of my next question is I haven't really talking about traffic as well. So both of these bridges and roads have to cross train traffic. That when the train goes across it, backs up traffic. I've been there, and it backs it all the way back to like Wilson, all the way back. At 200, 400,000 extra people. I mean, I want to take bets on what's going to be the most. It's going to be the most congested piece of road in all of Ontario. I mean, I've heard there's a lot of great things, man. Geez, this is one of the ones I want to be known. But have you considered that in your studies?
So I'll say no, it's not specifically considered what are the impacts on the at-grade crossing. But what is identified are queue lengths from intersections on either side. And so that is identified, and something else that is
Sorry,
identified.
did it pass any sort of test? Not to think about my apologies, just
Right,
use
so,
keywords, but you can't that couldn't have been accepted.
so for the 200 homes, there's nothing unacceptable. When you get to the full build out, yes, there are peaks that are likely to impact that crossing. And what is identified in the town's transportation master plan is another north-south new arterial road on the east end of town. And at some point, it acknowledges in the transportation master plan that as pieces of development, including these lands, go forward, and it's totally market driven. But as time unfolds and we see how quickly things do develop, demand that's there, the town will need to prepare for a time when that second arterial is needed because that one's full.
Can I just say now's probably the time to prepare councils. Just if you're looking for an opportunity. It's just what. I know some of you may or may not be here, at the most of you are re-elected. This working with good policy to raise constituents. I'd be one of them. Thank you for that. So also we didn't get an answer for that. Again, councillors present, mayor present. To the extent that you can, CAIVAN does need to purchase the land for the crossings of two bridges. What plans do you have with this decision inevitably crosses your desk? One of the council members, please respond to that question. Oh, okay. So the question was, CAIVAN will have to purchase county or municipal land. What is your plan for that? And I'd like a member of council.
Yeah.
I can bring the microphone to you. Yes, that's something.
So which municipal land are you referring to?
Well, specifically, Midley, I don't, but you mentioned that there were municipal lands that Joe, can you help me out here? Or sorry, Joe.
Yeah, no, that's
Thank you.
Sure. So there are lands where the multi-use pathway will have to go to be able to cross the bridge in it. And so the town owns these lands. So what this gentleman is wondering is essentially, what are your plans if the developer asks council to sell those lands to him, I assume the question is, would you say yes or no?
It's hard to answer a question about something that might happen in the future. It does. That would have to go to the council of the day.
I understand you answering that, like a politician, not break your constituents here this. So please do consider and respect us for change. I mean, like. Did we make a mistake in electing you? I mean, that's the question we're now asking ourselves, but we can't answer questions that are concerning all people here. You understand that, right?
So you're asking a question of me as the mayor. And a lot of people have the impression that the mayor makes all the decisions. When I say it would have to go to the council of the day, that's just the way it is. All council would have to make a decision together, considering the parameters, considering the information provided by the staff. I can't answer that question right now because there's no adequate information.
Actually, can you point to the map where the area of land was outlined, that you would be considering? Okay, sorry, I realize there are other people, I have one more question, my apology, Gary. Did answer your question.
Sorry, I think we have a counselor here.
Oh, good job. Hi, very good. Thank you.
I'll use this mic. I'm Gary Waterfield. I'm currently a counselor. I'm also running for re-election. You've just shared with us a public bargaining chip. So that's my answer. We have a public bargaining chip with land that you're speaking about. I look forward to that coming across my desk because there's going to be a really big discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, apologies for my director. And all three questions is just, you stated that you alluded, in your statement that looking at a number of studies that have to be done, there is a 3-year clock where all this gets reset. You can see, in your opinion, are they able to get all this done in these 3 years? Or are we going to be in a situation we have to kind of redo all this?
I think it will be a very tight timeline for them to make. I have made judgment calls on things like this before and I have lost. So what I will say is it's a lot because they have to perform the studies, then we have to peer review them, then we have to come up with like conditions or comments, and then it depends, things the plan may or may not have to change, which may influence something else. There's the sale of land, there's permits from the conservation authority, there's negotiations with town and county staff. It's an uphill battle, I would say, but also there are very aggressive development groups, so it wouldn't surprise me if they were able to pull something out of the hat.
I'm not. That's no part. My last question was, is there an opportunity for member groups to just come in and buy land and redevelop in a way that meets the conditions? Is there anything that the land tribunal rules are preventing them from doing that?
It's a free market. If somebody approached the developer and said, "You want to buy your land," and they sold it, then yeah.
Okay, yes, I was just curious if there's any sort of document that this. It's the only thing for creating of the land, and I realize the value is increased with the additional zoning. But do you feel an investor could actually come in and just develop this in a more sustainable way?
I mean, I don't know what they pay for it. We seem to. I can tell you they put a lot of money into consulting hours and studies, which would have increased that price dramatically. I know they think this is a big enough gain that they want to flip it to somebody else. If that's a question that somebody's free to ask them.
So I have follow-up questions on that one, but okay, thank you. And for
Well, my reason for coming this evening was, the wetlands
the floodplains and the surrounding neighborhood of this area is under attack from developers. Not just CAIVAN, but others who will be coming along on their heels, see if they can't press new fortunes from Perth. Perth, as we all know, is going at a pretty considerable rate. Traffic is going at a very considerable rate. And we need to protect ourselves more effectively. And we need to protect the wetlands in particular. Every species in our area is going to be endangered if we go forward with this project. Not just certain species selected by the conservation. Conservation Authority hasn't been doing a particularly great job of representing the interests of our area. They seem to allow us to be in the pocket of developers under the supervision of the Premier. Very concerned for the future of our area, and I do sincerely hope that we will be more considerate of the species that are also resident in this area and will be effectively wiped out by the construction of this huge project. Thank you.
I just want to acknowledge that, those feelings. I think, the Conservation Authority is, a body of the province. And the province has, similar to what's happening with municipalities, has done, similar things, with removal of power from the Conservation Authority. So they, can no longer comment on species at risk. They're only able to comment on, like hazard lands, floodplains, and unstable slopes and the like. They are not permitted to provide comments on anything else that the towns and municipalities depend on them for other comments. So they have had their mandate shifted and narrowed significantly. And so I wouldn't necessarily say they're in the pocket of the foreign government, more that they've been mandated as such in a similar way that municipalities have been. But I acknowledge what you're saying, and I think all of us are experiencing, the feeling of loss of this, particularly given that Perth is surrounded on every side by wetland, and the regulations are less and less and less. So I appreciate your comment.
I'm probably not the only person who has trouble looking at plans and trying to understand what the hell's going on. And
Same.
And the, the promotional just with CAIVAN and this and that. I was just saying, I'm not the only one that has trouble reading plans, understanding plans, and the promotional stuff from CAIVAN, which hasn't done very much. I was really helped. But I must say, I don't even understand what a twin bridge is. That's one question. Is it, from what I've seen there, it looks like it's just expanding. Which I thought it would be making another bridge next to it. Okay, I thought it would be building another bridge next to it. I'm surprised, and I wanted to ask for a trophy that the fire marshal, because it seems what he's agreed to is significantly different, I think, from what he initially stated in his written statement. And thirdly, I wanted to know if expropriation of homes is going to be necessary to facilitate traffic and safety going across this bridge.
Thank you for your question. Significantly different, yes, is what I want. No, it's kind of like David and Goliath, really. Currently we have 0 homes built until 2 bridges are in there and not beside each other. What they proposed is a separate bridge. So you have one bridge and a new bridge beside it. So it's 2 ways in. It's still not 2 ways in, but with the multi-access point, you are now with one size block, you can at least get in the other way. What I was comfortable with was less than what we settled on. It's kind of like a gamble, so, either you get nothing or you get something.
Is it a gamble with safety?
It's shown, it's recommended at 100, we're at 200. They have a ton of studies to do. I've done everything I can, and the documents I'm referring are best practices, right? Ideally, I would like 0, we're not there.
That's sad. The other question is, would it, this is for other people, I guess, with expropriation, is that in the works? To make for sightlines, everything with this huge amount of, potentially huge amount of traffic coming down Peter Street and so on, and if expropriation, that's the town's responsibility, I assume.
It would be the town's responsibility to expropriate. That hasn't been discussed, and I don't believe that would be anything that we're looking to do at all. There would be I'm gonna look at these guys because they're the traffic and civil, but the developer has to go through detailed design, which would show exactly where things are gonna be located and then what effect that might have on properties. But my understanding is at this point, expropriation is not being considered.
Good evening, my name is Bonita Ford, and I am with the Citizens for Sensible Development. So a lot of the issues that we're speaking to this evening, let me start by saying thank you very much to the town for finally hosting this evening. I think it's been very helpful to receive this information in detail. And I think a lot of the issues that are, a lot of the challenges that we're facing at the municipal level, your hands are tied. I get that, I see that. And so I really want to encourage every single person in this room to contact MPP John Jordan. I will speak in a moment to some of the environmental issues, and some of the problems there are certainly at a provincial level. And so I could speak about the floodplain, the species at risk, the encroachment into the provincially significant wetland, but I'm not going to because there are way behind me. And what I want to focus on are the sediment conditions. So using Gary's words, I am here right now with 3 small potential bargaining chips. I don't think any of this will be a surprise to you, Joanna. I've sent numerous emails to yourself, to other staff members in Colorado Council numerous times. So what I want to point out are the first piece is condition number 63 in the settlement documents. So condition 63, oh gosh, I'm getting older, I can't look. I can't read and look at you, my glasses at the same time. So condition number 63, so within 30 meters of water, a water course that could impact fish habitat, we have the right to a fisheries assessment and to be working with the DFO. So this is actually a federal issue. So so again, on your handouts, we said contact your MP. This is the piece around fish habitat. This is in federal jurisdiction. So that is the first small bargaining chip. And also the water course realignment affects that same area. So again, that's disturbance, disruption to fish habitat. We should absolutely be demanding a fisheries assessment, getting the DFO involved before any of that realignment work happens. The second small bargaining chip that I want to bring to the table, and I bring this because I want the town to be pushing hard on our behalf. So again, this is on the environmental front, the environmental impact study. I was very impressed with Rob West's work, so the town's witness that criticized the EIS. And condition number 23 allows for the EIS to be updated to the satisfaction of the town. I want every single person to hear that. This is another bargaining chip. If the town is not satisfied with the updated environmental impact study, what happens? Can we say no at that point? I would urge us to say no. especially because Rock West was very clear in stating that there were 6 significant wildlife habitats that were not mapped in the EIS. And that those need to be mapped in order for the town to determine whether conditions number 65 through 68 are fulfilled or not. So condition 65 through 68 in the settlement documents refer to species at risk. And if those are not mapped and adequately researched and observed in the EIS, we can't move ahead on condition 65 through 68. So that is a bargaining chip. Similarly, in the settlement documents, there's a lot of wording around no negative impacts. And I understand that, again, the town's hands are tied because of the net benefit approval at the provincial level, push the MPP on that. It's unacceptable that in our official plan, we have protections for species at risk, but the town cannot even engage in that discussion, cannot argue for those pieces. And so again, if we want no negative impacts on the significant woodlands or the fish habitat, which again is federal jurisdiction, we should be holding back on that EIS and making them dot every single fucking I and T, and making sure that we are covered on that front. And then finally, don't quote the fucking card, sorry. The last piece is on the archaeological assessment. So this is not my area of expertise, though based on a review by a friend who is studying as a young archaeologist. And so she reviewed the stage 3 assessment, and I look at the OP, so let me read this to you. And so the official plan says an archaeological assessment report shall generally be required for development proposals within 250 meters of a known archaeological resource or within an area of archaeological potential. So what I want to point out to folks is that the Flet Farm, the stage 3 archaeological assessment was on the Flet Farm. And if I'm reading this correctly, that assessment was not, the footprint that it covered was not large enough. There is an overlay that I have on the blue board towards the front that shows a green ring. If I'm reading the OP correctly, the entire western portion of this subdivision should be subject to an archaeological assessment before they touch anything. And because the stage 3 shows that there are archaeological artifacts, then they did recommend, so CAIVAN's archaeological assessment of the Flet Farm did recommend stage 4. So they have to, if they have to either do a stage 4 assessment or excavate, and that excavation should be taken up that whole western lawn. So this is another bargaining chip. And so my question to you, thank you for listening for so long to the folks that I'm looking at. So who will be responsible for ensuring the highest standard for the EIS and for the larger area archaeological assessment? We have this in writing. These are in our conditions. Let's use them.
And I completely agree. The EIS, again, I think will be going to Rob West because I thought he did a bank job, quite frankly. And he sort of understands this project. So when they come back in with a revised study, that will be going to him. And he and I have had a lot of conversations. I think we understand each other very well. And so if he's satisfied, I will quite frankly be satisfied. I'm not a professional, but he seems to, have his head on right. With respect to archaeology, there is a condition there that they are required to do a phase 4. They are aware of that. And I was talking earlier about holding zones. I could flip through these slides, but I don't think I will, where I have other stuff written. But a holding zone is essentially an area that the town puts a hold on for specific reasons. And that is one area where there will be no development until they clear specific conditions, one of which would be a completed stage 4 archaeological assessment. We have an archaeological peer reviewer do that work. At that point, it actually does go back to I'm gonna get the wrong ministry, but Ministry of Culture and whatever it is. And they have to review that study against their mandate, and then they provide me with a piece of paper saying, yes, this is good, no, it's not, they can go back and do that. So then I sort of have to get peer reviewer and then get the okay from the province before they can do anything, before I can clear that hole. So that's absolutely in there as a draft condition.
So there are many people in the room, I think, who will back you on taking those conditions to their absolute utmost highest standard. We are behind you, please do it. And I again urge every single person in this room to be expressing your concerns to our staff, to our council, to our federal and provincial members of parliament. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here today. Before I go down the controversial rabbit holes, I'm going to ask a simple question. Sooner or later, there is going to be some construction on that property, whether it's residential, commercial, or somewhere in between, whether it's a school, a clinic, a bakery, or whatever. All of those buildings are going to have exterior lighting. At the moment, if you go down to the end of Peter Street and you look towards that property, at night it is dark. Can you please put in place as fast as possible a dark sky bylaw in the town of Kirby that will require every single exterior light on every new structure? So I'm not just including the lands over on the golf cart property, but down the road, everything else that gets built, so that the orange glow, as the town gets bigger, doesn't get too much bigger. Because when you're down, say, Holland Farm, and you look towards town, you see an orange glow. Let's not see more of an orange glow, where right now it's dark. There are lots of birds and other animals out there that enjoy that environment. Let's do what we can, and that means you have to do what you can to make sure it stays as dark as possible. Okay, so now.
Can I just address that? It is on my list of things to do. I have to get through tonight.
You didn't come here to talk about.
Before we move on to other development specific things that we're gonna try to bring.
That's right,
Yes.
but that's an issue, and in this particular case on that kind of topic, we're starting over there with a blank slate.
Yeah.
So let's keep it going.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, now, I suspect that you're all aware that the Tay River is considered navigable water. And navigable water means that part of its jurisdiction is the exclusive domain of the federal government. I know it sounds weird to think that the Tay River is navigable water, but that's what the federal government considers it to be. As such, the federal government may have certain jurisdictional concerns with construction or repair or adaptation of existing bridges. An example might be, earlier we heard one of the gentlemen here talk about having to build a sewage collection system and then pump that sewage across a bridge or under the water and then down Rogers Road. That probably would require permission from the federal government. So I'm going to ask this question: when are you, or when is CAIVAN going to reach out to the federal government and start discussions about the aspects of this project that are falling under their umbrella of jurisdiction? Because I'll be very candid with you, I have very good contacts. And at least in the last 6 weeks, I can tell you that I've spoken with them a couple of times and they've never heard of any of these projects. So any of this business about running cables across the water, digging trenches to put water or communications equipment through, repairing that bridge, all of that probably they need to review and give permission to do. So somebody, I dare say, from this side of the ledger, I think needs to get ahead of it and needs to start that ball rolling, and I wonder when it's gonna happen.
I can take that. Oh, can I answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe, someone may have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that process is done through the environmental assessment. Nope. Okay,
I can tell you, there is an office in Sarnia
okay,
that has the jurisdiction for the entire province of Ontario under the Canadian Waterway Bill. That's where all of that decision making is made, and that's where the discussions stop and start.
could you send me that contact and then I will do that?
I'll do that.
And then the second point is, I think I tried to make it clear, but it may not be overly clear. We are very much at the beginning of this. I know it feels like we should be at the end because it's been 3 years. But when I talked at the beginning about buildable area and how that depends on floodplain and permission from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to determine significant habitat. And when I talk about environmental assessment to determine where the bridges land, we've only got one out of those 3 things. So this isn't something that's gonna happen overnight. The reason why we don't have a lot of answers is literally because we don't have a lot of information, or the information that we have is not updated to reflect the plans that have been provided. So while it seems like we don't necessarily know what we're doing, we're working with the information we have, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. And so I think,
Just let me come back
yeah,
on your point. Just, I'll come back to this jurisdictional issue. You've had some discussions, you've got a slide that says, well, they might want to put the bridge here, they might want to put the bridge there. Guess what? Transport Canada might say, no, it has to go over here, or it needs to go over there, for reasons which none of us have the ability at this stage to gauge to comprehend. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong, but they have their ways of doing things, and they have their jurisdictions, and they have a decision-making process. And it's way better to find out early that you have to change your plan, because they do not work on it. Well, okay, we're sorry you did this, but we'll let you get away with it. You can't go in and beg for forgiveness. But as far as they're concerned, generally speaking, it's yes or it's no. In my experience, because I had to work with them on other things, they're generally pretty good people to get along with. And they've got lots of interesting ideas, and they're not in the business of saying no. They're in the business of making sure that what's done is as good as it possibly can be. So you're better off to start way in advance, even if all you do is call them and say, guess what? We're working on something here. What do you need in order to be able to understand what we're talking about? They'll help you. So I suggest you do that.
I will take that contact information from you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've heard a lot of discussion tonight about infrastructure. Roads and this, that, and the other. And I've heard people say, well, okay, we have a bit of a master plan here, so we have a bit of a traffic master plan, and someone else said, oh, we have other master plans. What I have not heard or seen is any form of an input, what I would call an integrated infrastructure plan. You're putting a lot of houses and a lot of other structures in a place where none of those exist. On the other hand, on this side of the table, there are a lot of infrastructure that's already in existence. What seems to me needs to be done is a comprehensive plan that says, okay, we have to build a road here, we need to put a bridge there, we need to improve a road here, we need to expropriate some land, etc. But I'm frustrated because I don't see anyone rolling out what I'll call a big picture plan that says, in order to meet this with traffic over at the corner of Wilson and Peter is a mess. And I haven't heard any, let's say, good news on this topic about how we're going to make it better, even for today or for these days. There was a gentleman here talking about the traffic backing up. Well, if you build all those houses, the traffic's gonna be even more backed up. If the conversation about what to do isn't done now, what are we going to do later on when the traffic is in such a snarl that you can't move? For people, most people in this room probably watched the movie Animal House, where a parade went up an alley and a marching band going all confused and everybody, no one could move. That's what's gonna happen. Besides here, that's what's going to happen in that neighborhood unless there's a complete plan put together to deal with it. And you're gonna have to supply water and sewage and all of it. So the plan has to identify what needs to be done, and it's gonna have to identify what it's going to cost. But we haven't seen any of that. None of that's been rolled out on the table. And I realize that we're stuck dealing with the island, but there's the rest of us who have to live our lives to try to move through town while all of this work's going on. And I don't see any plan that's costly. And I don't see any plan that's identified what's going to be done to the existing town to make sure that it doesn't turn into the Animal House town. So that's what I would ask at some point is a plan.
I'm gonna turn that over to the two of you.
So I guess I'd start by saying, the CAIVAN's consultant, they have prepared what's called it's a functional servicing plan. So I mean, my specialty is I'm looking at the sewer and the water, grading, drainage, that kind of stuff. And so they demonstrated how they would service through development. And it includes things exactly that the gentleman over said was concerned. How is the wastewater getting to the lagoon? Right? It's a fair point. So they have demonstrated that. And through the process, there's then been a lot of negotiation and discussion. The shape of the plan has changed a bit. So CAIVAN now owes us an updated servicing plan. They need to refresh it and say, okay, here these changes have occurred. What's the plan look like now? It's going to be very similar, but it's on them. We're waiting on them to give us more material. So that kind of answers the sewer and water thing. Oh.
Well, it touches on it, but you know the way it is now. And you can see that the snowball of construction and the snowball of chaos associated with it is rolling down the hill. You might not necessarily know how sticky the snow is, but you know that it's going to land splat right at the corner of Peter and Rogers Road. So why aren't you able, and this same point is for the traffic study lady, why can't you roll out a game plan or at least a rudimentary game plan for what you're going to do, what you need to do? Because frankly, the other side of this is all of whatever work is going to need to be done is going to cost millions of dollars. And it's the taxpayers of Earth that are going to be stuck paying for all it, right? Because those are development charges that don't get passed on to the developer. This seems to me because Doug Fraud changed those things. So the taxpayers are going to get saddled with that burden. So I think you guys need to get ahead of all of this as much as you can and say, this is what we need to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And we may have to adjust a bit of this, a bit of that, but I haven't seen or heard any of that in any of these sessions or in any of these presentation documents. And I really think the time is right, because look, we don't know what it's looking like, but as I said, the snowball's coming down the hill, and you might as well get ahead of it now.
Yeah, I believe the servicing report is shielded currently, right? We're not allowed to reveal it at this point. Is that the case? Is it part of, I don't know, it's part of the legal materials. That's my understanding. Yeah. How do I answer? I mean, I think we're doing our best. I'm reviewing the materials that are provided from a sewer and water perspective. I've looked at what they're doing, it makes sense, it works. It is, okay, the other part is, there's a lot of concern of, who pays and who funds this, so. The developer pays for the sewer and water on their portion of land. That is developer funded. I guess the other component is looking bigger picture. I understand Perth now has an infrastructural master plan you're looking at, which is taking not just what CAIVAN's looking at, but looking more holistically at the entire community. And that I understand is underway, which to me makes perfect sense.
Well, I haven't heard anything about it, but to use your example, okay, your sewer and water. So if they're providing you, or if they've already provided you with a document that says, we need, the services property, we need 10 million liters of water a day. I'm just picking numbers.
Yeah.
All right, and meanwhile, you're sitting in your office and you're talking to your staff and you're doing your calculations, and you're thinking, they're probably gonna need 5. Right? All of a sudden you find out, geez, they're gonna need 10. And you've fixated on 5 and you've started the process of what are we gonna do if we have to buy 5? Because right now we can only buy 2. All of a sudden you're caught with your shorts around your knees. So that's why I say it seems to me you really need to get, it's not crystal ball gazing, it's projecting. And you really need to start the process, at least if you started it, tell us and show us, because there's a lot of talent here, a lot of good minds. People will walk you insight that might help you make the project better, but to not tell us or show us isn't going to help. It isn't going to help the mayor get reelected. It's just going to make things better for everyone.
Just to clarify, and I'm not gonna step on engineering toes, but because this is the developer's development, the town doesn't do design for the developer, that would actually be a conflict, right? If we said, oh, we think you're gonna need this size of pipe, and you're gonna have to plan this and that, then we tell them what to do, then they do it, and then we approve it. We're designing and approving. So we can't give and take with both hands. It's not allowed professionally.
Right, but do you guys know the output of your water filtration system?
Yeah, well, but yes,
What I'm trying to say is, get ahead of it, and if you're ahead of it, tell us.
we are doing an infrastructure master plan.
I'm gonna be quiet. But I have one last question for Madam Mayor. She's not gonna like this. Earlier, you didn't want to answer the question that the gentleman asked about having a vote situation. So I'm gonna change the paradigm slightly. And I'm gonna tell you that today is not June the 11th, 2026, it's June the 11th, 2025. And in front of you as the mayor, or as a member of council, is it, do we vote on selling them the piece of property to put that bridge footing on the ground on property we own, yes or no?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, if you were asked in 2026, if today was in 2027, and you were asked to vote on whether or not municipal property should be sold to CAIVAN to put the land there bridge footings on town property, would you agree or disagree to sell that piece?
So you're talking about the piece of land that the gentleman asked for.
That's all right. I'm just changing the time frame to after the election, so you're in next council. Would you or would you vote for it or against it?
It's difficult for me to imagine with the amount of property that CAIVAN has now, that they would want to buy another piece of property. So what can I ask, what do you see, is the difficulty about that particular piece of land? As I understand it, it's the land just at the end of the bridge, the end where the condominium is. Is that right?
Yeah, the point is, if you don't sell that property, they can't build a bridge. Therefore, if they can't build a bridge, it has an impact on what they're able to do or not do on their property. So, because a lot of people here don't want to see that development take place, what's your answer? Yes or no?
So in effect, you are asking if I would vote to sell the land, whatever to make it possible for them to go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah, so I sense that most of the people here really don't like the idea of the development going ahead for a number of reasons. But you also have to look at the broad picture. The Mercy's downtown and this.
it's simple. Yes or no?
Yes. Because the subdivision, that many people have doubts, is on the whole beneficial to the town. And then, as I was saying, if you ask the merchants downtown, they're all in favor of it. Summertime is fine. Lots of tourists, no problem doing business. They need more people to carry them through the winter. So that's why they need more people.
I'm sorry.
I think sometimes that's a tough.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Sorry, before you get started, I appreciate the questions, and again, as I said at the beginning, the emotions behind this as well, for community that we all care about. There are people on both sides of this. The purpose of tonight is, to answer questions about the details and the factual parts of this development. There's time during the election period to be all candidates meetings, you can ask. Split up the type of questions tonight is, to keep your questions focused on the aspects of the development and on the technical parts there.
Sorry. My name's Steve Jones, I'm from Market. This is Honor. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My name's Steve Jones, I've done a lot of work for the citizens of Perth on the CAIVAN project, mostly in the traffic sector. And I have three concerns. The first one really is the location of the second bridge. I will make a comment right off the bat that the second bridge should be built on day one. And that is to prevent basically complete catastrophe in downtown, small streets, of Perth. Because the developer is going to be bringing in concrete trucks, excavators, gravel trucks, very long trailer loads of flat pack products, and I know that they do modular housing. Modular housing, 12 feet wide, 30, 40 feet long. It's coming in on a semi trailer. And there's not one street, not even North or Peter, that's going to handle those kind of loads and maintain traffic while all of that is going on. So that's point number one. Point number, the other point is here, the second bridge. It's been located by the developer in exactly the wrong fucking place. Excuse my language. CAIVAN owns the north site from the north end of their subdivision, across the Tay, all the way up to Christie Lake Road.
Yes.
They own that property. That's where they should build a second bridge. They don't have to buy any property or if they expropriate anything. They just build it and keep on. So that's my first point. Mic drop. Sorry about that, folks.
I can do that next.
Okay. Second point, let's put these. Oh, yes, okay. Yeah, there's a business about Peter Street. And the young lady who's the traffic consultant representing the city of Perth, town of Perth, says that Peter Street is considered a collector lane, however, it's not actually local lane. North Street, on the other hand, is considered a local street and is actually wide enough to be called and considered a collector. So why on earth has the developer decided to trust everything on Peter Street, which is a narrow street possible? I understand also that they're doing a traffic study right now to find widen the street. I've done an analysis, I went down and I measured from the curve of the existing Peter Street to all the obstructions along the way. And there's no way that this developer could widen the street. So I don't even know why they're actually thinking about conducting a study, because that's a waste of freaking money. So my question is, why on earth didn't they think outside the box? And you guys think outside the box and say, maybe Peter Street isn't the place where we want to farm everybody up, 200 people, maybe 500 people. And those are just people. How many cars are going to be in each street? There's probably going to be at least 1.5, 2 cars on each one of these little 3-bedroom units, because those people are going to be working and they're probably driving into auto or someplace where they have to get employment to afford the mortgage. So there's going to be a lot more people lined up and queued up on Peter Street that you have to imagine. You said, oh, it's all good on the 200 count. Well, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be worse on the 200 count. And I don't want you to answer me this year, because I've played it quite long enough. I'm getting anyway, that's part of it. So I guess the question is, number 3, emergency access. I put up all those boards, I did it with pleasure, actually, as a worker's pleasure, to do an analysis of traffic. One item that I know that goes Trevor and Grant, they actually looked at the drawing. The mayor didn't look at those drawings. You didn't even look at the drawings. So I'm going, okay, and I know Joanna has Stephen, because I asked her to send a bunch of both Trevor and herself. And you guys are reviewing, I understand, reviewing them, and you'll come back with some comments, which is great. Because there's a lot of merit, is what I told them on the board. And that's thinking outside the box. It's thinking outside the box also for emergency site access to Carolina Port and all the rest of it. So, and the emergency access is also on the development. That's why you also need the second bridge, because if there's a fire in there, that little Peter Street bridge isn't going to be much good, even if it's 200. And I think the fire chief may actually corroborate that. So I don't stand down, or unless you want to respond.
But I would like to respond. In terms of the widening of Peter Street, I just want to clarify, to our knowledge, the only part of Peter Street that is proposed to be widened is west of Leicester Lane, which was shown on the plan earlier, how the bridge will be twinned, and then it will come in and intersect at Leicester and Peter. So that portion, yes, because right now it's kind of 2-way, 1 lane. Yes, that portion does need to be widened to reflect our standard. So that's my understanding of the widening of Peter Street is just that. I agree with you. I don't think it can be widened beyond that. And in terms of the volume, it's not that the development traffic is going to be restricted to only use Peter. It can go up Leicester and use North, and a certain percentage has been assumed. Peter does have the signal, even though, in my opinion, it likely functions closer to a local class rather than what it is designated as a collector. But the signal does help it at Wilson to make the left turn movements, which are difficult. And I don't know, Trevor, if you wanted to talk any further about the fire routes and that. But yeah, the multi-use pathway intent of it is to count as a second emergency access, so that when the bridge is twinned and there are 2 actual decks, if something happens on the one deck, the other deck is still clear as a backup plan. And so again, if there was something a fire truck couldn't get through via Peter Street, it could independently come on North, make it through the map, and on the other bridge. That's the intent of, a second emergency access up to those 200 homes for the next bridge is repaired.
I do agree with the chap that was before me, because what I understand now is. The town person, the planning department and staff. Essentially, they're trying to be asked to develop a proposal. And so, what this other chap was mentioning was the comprehensive master plan, which goes beyond any developer. That your entire town sorts out where you would like to provide growth, what service you would already have in the ground, the infrastructure you have to, handle sewage, water, hydro, whatever. That's comprehensive master plan, and it also applies to traffic. I'm just saying that if that second bridge goes to Crystal, there really won't be another connection to Highway 7, where the fueling at a railway crossing isn't going to fuel. So you take it further down the lake because you can't do it at the first or second because there's no fuel. So I'd like to have this kind of stuff really thought about by all of it. I mean, think outside of the box. This developer is only coming to you with a thin margin of design credibility. And you have to think outside the box and say, you know what, there's a better way of doing things. And we're going to stand our ground and we're going to let you come up with the ideas that are a lot better than the one you proposed.
So we have, for everybody, not just, Stephen, but, we are working on an infrastructure master plan and transportation master plan, I think is what it's called. I'll let Grant to talk about that. That's his department.
So we've been talking about this topic tonight, and I just want to bring clarity to this item. The municipality has two master plans already in existence in their public documents. Please feel free to look at those that are in the status quo. So we know how our system currently operates. What we're doing in 2026 is two independent master plans, one for the infrastructure for the water and sewer, and one for the transportation. Those are going to be completed in early 2027. And one of the primary functions of those two master plans are to ensure the capacity of the existing infrastructure now, so that you as the public are protected. The secondary benefit of doing these master plans are to incorporate the development pressures being CAIVAN and Perth or any other areas that are hotspots in this valley. So we are acknowledging those. We are waiting for those development pressures to come forward so we can include them in the IMP and the TMP. But they're very critical. I would leave you with these two thoughts. The water plant is operating at 50% capacity. So if you're concerned about the capacity of us producing water, we're only half its rated capacity. The second part is our sewage capacity. We're currently at 2/3 its capacity, and we're currently undergoing an upgrade to increase that to 10,500 people. So we're in good standing now as we're talking. So I would just close that those master plans are key documents of deliverables. We're hearing the public, and we have this awareness as municipal officials.
I'll keep it really brief. I drove over here today, Browns, Oakland, we got here about an hour before this meeting. Got two grandchildren over there. I've lived here now for over 20 years. I currently live on Wilson Street, so I know about traffic and pollution, that kind of stuff. Now, I've got a question for the chief. They'll put you on the spot. Are you aware of any type of spills or chemicals or that kind of stuff in any of those areas where this construction is going to take place?
The golf course specifically, no.
Well, not just the golf course, but that area, that the abattoir in that area.
As far as those, no.
Okay, that's one question. I would invite anybody who wants to know what this is going to look like. You go down to Bowmanville and spend an hour or two driving around. That's what Perth will turn into. And I'll tell you, I don't wish my grandson. They actually have to block off the end of the street so the kids can play go-karts or whatever on the street. I mean, that's crazy, you can't live like that. That could go wrong. Thank you.
My response to that would be to talk to your provincial government.
I've read that neighboring towns such as Providence and Richmond have allowed housing developments and found that the costs were in excess of development charges, so my question is about development charges.
Just bring the mic a little closer to you.
Sorry. Thanks. My question is about development charges because I've heard that other towns have had developments approved and then the costs exceeded what they charged. Given the scale of the CAIVAN proposal and the provincial's rules shaping it, would it be a good idea for the town to have a development charges background study? I think that's the mechanism used to review before building permits are given, to make sure that the town doesn't, have that occur with a holding the bag financially.
We do have a development charges study and a development charges bylaw. In place, in existence.
Right.
And the areas laid out for which those development charges would be used for. The province is, and federal government are now asking municipalities to cut their development charges in half. With the offer of providing funding for infrastructure, help construction and infrastructure within the.
So I've heard that, just from reading, looking it up, that it hurts present development charges are about half of Carlton places. And so could we not reduce ours by 50% because they already are? In other words, should we have a model of the proper development charge and then evaluate whether the province and federal contribution will be sufficient? And know what to charge CAIVAN.
So our development charges were reviewed, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. My thought, because I actually used to work in Carlton Place, had been that they were too low. We had them reviewed by Watson and Economists, who are a German corporation who do these at least province-wide, if not Canada-wide. And when they reviewed our numbers, they felt as though probably if we formally redid the study, we would actually have to ask for less. And so we left it as is. I don't know all the background information of that. It's not in my bailiwick, but we did have the study updated, and the group that specializes in development charges just said, like,
So you're satisfied that it should not be a problem?
I personally am not satisfied, but I don't know, I mean, I'm not a mathematician, I don't do development charges, and they obviously went through the process that they go through with most municipalities, and that was their take on it.
Right. Thanks.
I just have a question about schools. I haven't heard anybody talk about schools, and obviously I'm too old for school age children now. But I am wondering if the local school boards have weighed in on the plan, the CAIVAN plan, and whether they can accommodate the additional students that will be moving into Perth. And if not, have they accommodate without seriously overcrowding the classes? And if not, is there, do the school board or does the town infrastructure plan deal with setting aside, or is there some available property that would be kept available for new schools to be built?
It's a really good question, and I speak from experience on this and in other places I've worked. So specifically with respect to schools here, all of the school boards were notified of this development, and nobody brought forward any concerns. There is going to be a school board meeting sometime in June, sorry, the date escapes me, which I will be attending to bring these issues up again. From places I've previously worked, we've done things like secondary plans that actually select an area that says, you know, this can be developed as residential or commercial or what you will, but this 4 acre section, how big is gonna be for schools. And then I proactively called all 4 school boards for probably 6 of the 10 years I worked there. And I didn't have uptake from anybody at all. So I don't, we do the best we can, if and it's the same thing with hospital in this case, you know, we reach out, if we don't hear back. There's not an awful lot we can do aside from continuing to push the case, which I do.
One last question, can we assume that you have excellent legal advice? I mean, with all the changes from the provincial government and so on.
You can assume, yes, that we have legal advice. You're all day, you might as well watch.
I've been listening, I just have a comment. This summer, we've had a lot of construction in Perth. The roads were almost impossible to get down. And that was only small streets. I can't imagine the traffic that's gonna happen when they're talking about the construction trucks coming in and all of that, and then you throw in the festival of the Maples. And then you throw in the Park Festival, like you have all here tonight. I'm sure we had a lot of parking spots for you, but during the Festival of the Maples, during the Stewart Park Festival, if we have somebody rent this home, we hardly ever have enough parking because everybody else uses it. So what are the plans for all of that extra vehicles and traffic that we do not have room for right now?
With respect to parking?
Well, that's one issue, and I brought up the other, just small streets that have regular maintenance being done. It has made getting around Perth very difficult for people. Like I had people try to get here and they're like, oh, we tried to go that way, but we couldn't get that way, so we had to try another way, so. I mean, and that's without 900 more houses or 3,000 more people or whatever. I really just don't think the traffic will be that great. That's all.
I can respond with respect to parking, and that is to say, I've had a couple of discussions with council, with respect to having another plan, master parking plan that sort of looks at what areas of town require parking, where is the traffic, where is it going, where should parking be? So I'm hoping to put that into my 2027 budget and have that looked at. With respect to other parking issues, I did ask Jennifer to comment.
Yes, in terms of the construction traffic management, I'm sure there will be a lot of it for a long time. I'm not actually sure if the town has a road activity bylaw or a road cut process, but before the contractor can begin construction, he will have to prepare a traffic management plan. That's going to show where he's bringing the construction traffic, and that will have to be reviewed and approved before he does so. So we're not there yet, because we're still in these very preliminary stages, but it will come, and it has to be reviewed and approved before it's.
I'm sorry here on behalf of those who live on Rogers Road, especially on the riverside. So if we get some infrastructure going on there, are you gonna pay for the rowboats for us to get downtown? I'm being facetious because I try to think on all the different avenues of traffic. How people who live on this road get out during the festivals. There's people who know to come and park on Tom and John Street and on Rogers Road and walk over the bridge to downtown the Stewart Park. That will not be accessible to them. That's just a few weekends. But right now, my bypass is going Rogers, Peter, Lewis Street to Isabella. Then we get out to Mall and so on. I mean, those are not collective roads. Even there, you have to be very careful. The light at the traffic light at Peter and Wilson already, I think, needs to be adjusted because there's no time to turn. The pedestrians, especially during tourist season and now, is extremely dangerous. So these are just things that I noticed when Robinson Street, because of the Robinson Street cut off. And we had one of those extremely long trucks come down Rogers Road as part of the town's planned detour and go around Rogers and Peter. The backup was crazy. It took him, I would say, about 4 minutes to get around that corner. It's one long truck. What about all the brothers during construction time? I remember when my husband worked in Carlton Place in the 1990s, and the mayor was building a second water tower, and people thought he was crazy. He said, "Oh no, we'll need this in 9 years." Sure enough, he did. I think that advanced planning is so crucial. Since living in a condo, I realized they planned 30 years out. I mean, in a house, I never thought that far ahead, but a town must be thinking even further ahead and acted upon it. What I understand, bridge on the north side over the Christie Lake Road was something the town recognized in 2012. What was done to prepare for that possibility of using that area? These things are planning so far ahead. Procrastination is the mother of all. So really hope that the good ideas you have for the future get initiated. And please don't tell us that we have to go buy a boat.
Thank you. I want to ask one question that nobody has asked is about this. We have an exit on Lewis Street to the park. And that's huge. And that means a lot of people are walking. With the trucks that are going to be coming in and the cars, how are we going to ensure that nobody's going to get hit trying to cross that street?
We'll direct that question to our traffic expert.
So we don't know at this time which way the trucks will be coming. It's my knowledge of was local. I don't think that would be a route that expected to be affected.
Lewis has an access, direct access to the park. And people walk up and down Lewis, crossing the street. So it's not just 4 or 5 houses, you're talking about people.
Right.
And certainly during festivals, I'm sure it's a crowd.
Yes. And is the question about construction traffic or just volume of traffic?
Volume from the construction traffic to me, I know what trucks do, they're in a hurry and they're gonna try to go as fast as they put on that street to get to the setup. So how are you going to ensure? Are you gonna put a light there to make sure that people can cross and not get hurt?
The construction routes will be studied. I don't know what they will be. It is provided to propose. They'll know how they want to bring their trucks in. So unfortunately, we can't say with certainty tonight how we're going to do it. But it will have to be proposed and reviewed.
Not reassuring. What you're saying is not reassuring. What's going to happen? There's kids coming out of that park. There's people coming out of that park, and you need to be sure that whatever happens there, there's a way to cross that street safely.
Exactly. If it were part of the construction, right, it's agreed 100%. The point of those plans.
How would it not be part of the construction if they, when we get there, for modules and heaters? What other way can they get there? Just to make sure if there's a second bridge.
And another connection, that's good. Yeah, you don't realize. Yeah, I don't.
And then turn onto this on the street. As that's the next.
Oh, no, what the shit is. But why are not traffic. From the marks,
Do you have a question that's not traffic related?
Question is, with regards to the street, it does have a speeding at 40 kilometers per hour. If people put on, I live on the other street, but it's not, yeah,
No, and then.
They do.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it's.
Just while other questions are coming up, I just wanted to speak briefly about planning and other things. The questions come up several times about the town planning and for infrastructure and other things. We do have grants mentioned infrastructure master plan, transportation master plan. We do have other plans. We are planning for a water tower. As Grant mentioned, we are creating our lagoon with thanks to the province. The province is pushing housing. We all read every day about housing pressure and demand for housing across the country. So clearly the federal government and the provincial government are responding to that. Legislation that helps promote that, and the town's responding to that. And we are taking advantage of support like the $3 million of funding for the lagoon. We're applying next week for tens of millions more for water tower for the arterial road that'll help address some traffic concerns as well.
I just say most of us aren't against growth. It's just this particular project. Just don't paint us with a brush. We're happy with most of the other developments. This one, it's just kind of dumb.
Sarah.
I was actually going to make the same comment. The mayor's alluded to that. Earth needs growth, Earth would die. Okay. CAIVAN does not have the best reputation. I think that's widely recognized. But the golf course land, whatever it calls, is a perfect opportunity to expand Earth. As long as it's done responsibly under the council and the government of Earth guidance, so that CAIVAN doesn't build and just apply. So as long as it's guided and hopefully restrained and then build a nice community. Someone said, walk in Bowmanville, it's just a crappy neighborhood. There's no reason why a new neighborhood can't be built. CAIVAN's best interest, but in the best interest of Earth, build a nice neighborhood where people like to live. And it's a nice place to walk the roadway, raise children. Anyways, I just want to state that I personally believe yes, we do need to grow. More all the other things, get some growth. We don't want to get it down. Grow or die, that's where it goes. One specific question I had, the floodplain that's being developed, cut fill. Are they raising this land where this 100-year floodplain will not be available anymore? And what is the hydrology report? I mean, yeah, the 100-year flood is devastating, but do these floodplains, whatever they call, fill with 5 years? Do you have? I also don't, not an insignificant storm, but are they used enough that it's no longer available? Where does the water go? What part of Earth is being flooded?
the storm ponds, that's a huge question. And I just want to state for the record, my business is growth. So last 4 years, I've approved quite a number of units in both infill and greenfield, and I agree with what you're saying. The growth is gonna happen on the golf course, we've planned for it, that's the intent. What I think we all want is a functional, responsible way to grow.
And unfortunately, from what I understand, he owns land now, so it's their way or whatever.
I will remain silent on the subject.
So there's kind of two components, you've got. With regards to storm ponds, there's 3 ponds they're proposing on the site. That's to provide quality control and quantity control for what they're developing. Okay, so quality control is trying to get us suspended settlements, just not pollute the environment as much. Quantity control, to your question, is typically they will store up to what's called a 100-year design storm, right? So that's the threshold they store to, and then it will be released into this case the Cane River, right? The other side of what you're looking at is what's the water level in the Tay, and that leads to the hydrology and the hydraulics and the cut and fill and all that complexity.
Don't answer the question. So with the cut and fill, they're raising the land of the golf course. Or leveling it up, so there are no big ponds to control the storm. Get the 100-year, I mean, that's, but every 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, you get a big storm. Do those ponds right now fill up with accumulate some water that is slowly released back out to the table or to the ground, whatever. And if those ponds are no longer available, where's that water going?
Right, okay, so you're not talking about the ponds that are on site that CAIVAN will construct. I think what you're.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm missing something here. There are currently ponds on as part of the golf course land. And they're being filled into this.
Right, okay, you're getting to the cut bill, understood. So, okay, I did not do or I did not review the cut bill, that was the conservation authority. So the general premise of it, I can speak to the approach. So what they do, the cut literally, it is, we're cutting some areas, we're filling some areas. And the theory is whatever you are filling in, you should have an equivalent amount of cut so that the volume of storage is equal. That's the approach.
That's the theory.
That's the theory.
And their plan to show that is forest cable like faster.
So, okay, so I did not look at the cut and fill. That's a question for the conservation authority. What I can say is I did look at the stormwater management for the development lands. They're doing exactly what any developer would. You're controlling up to the 100-year storm.
Right, so there is a plan to, I mean, the 100-year storm, years, but the 5-year, the 2-year storms will be adequately handled. The new ponds they're going to build to replace the ones that live. So the other parts of Earth will be flooded. Because the table.
No. Yeah. No. As part of development, they will capture and route flow to the ponds they're going to construct on their lands.
Right.
As mayor, I just want to thank the staff for the tremendous amount of work that they have put into this project. I've had emails, people would say, I think a lot of town is just playing over and playing dead and not adequately protecting us, but you can see how much work the staff has done to do that. In addition, we had a lawyer representing us at the tribunal and at the mediation, and roughly speaking, we paid about $500,000. So we have been hard at work to protect the town, to protect you. Wanted to make sure that you knew that.
Are there any other questions, comments? It appears that there are none. My email is available on the website. I'm happy to hear your comments and concerns and answer questions or direct them to the appropriate people for answers. I really appreciate you coming out and spending the time tonight on this.